Welcome to Fox Hill's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and opinions. Today is Monday, August 1st, and I'm Mimi Brown.
And I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo. And on today's report, Russia seems open to a prisoner swap, but they are adjusting the terms a bit, keeping specifics of the deal under wraps. And if a release isn't confirmed, this could be a talking point for Democrats in November. Meanwhile, the Justice Department's probe into the insurrection is gaining traction as news transcripts from the January 6th committee hearings will be shared with the Justice Department. Then, should artists' lyrics be protected from being used in court? A new act introduced to Congress aims to provide artists immunity.
Plus, Will Smith answers all the burning questions you've had after his viral interaction at the Oscars earlier this year. And a fellow singer is calling out Beyonce for sampling her song for her album without permission. We have all of that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth. So let's get it.
Russian officials, they want to add a former spy convicted of murder in Germany as part of the deal to get Brittney Griner and Paul Whelan back on U.S. soil. In addition to Viktor Bout, the notorious arms dealer, Moscow wants to add Vadim Krasikov, who worked for Russia as a domestic spy agency. Krasikov is currently in a German prison. Sources say the Russian government, they want to keep the prisoner swap negotiations quiet. The former foreign minister for Russia, they say that prisoner swaps are typically done discreetly behind closed doors. He says the public doesn't find out about the swaps until the exchanges have been made. So this is problematic for a number of reasons. The new guy, Krasikov, he is a convicted murderer. So before, I think we've been dealing with, and not to say that the Russian arms, Viktor Bout, he wasn't dangerous, but we know that this guy murdered someone in Germany last year. He's also, what the U.S. is pointing out, that he's in German custody. And so while they want to get Griner and they want to get Whelan home, they're going to also have to talk to the Germans and make sure that this is a deal that they can make. And so CNN is reporting that the Biden administration, they did make a quiet inquiry to the Germans to talk about whether they would be willing to even do something. So this just kind of raises the stakes a little bit because it's not something in the U.S., in their constraints, in their power. They have to now ask the Germans, would they be willing to help them out? And so we'll see how that plays out a little bit.
Yeah, we definitely will. I think about when you talk about Brittney Griner and just her status alone. Look, she plays ball over there as well. She plays basketball. So people over there are probably favoring, like, how is this compared between the two? You just discussed what that man was on his record compared to what's on Brittney Griner's record. So I do think they know it's very high profile. They're probably getting backlash because they're still having her in prison this long, which is not a good look. So we're hoping at the end of the day, look, whether you want private conversations, whether you want it out in the public, let's just get her home ASAP. That's what we really want.
You know, I think that it's really unfair to Americans to ask for privacy when you have, so to speak, a celebrity on your arms that you've been keeping hostage, not hostage, but you've been holding and not giving us any details. And so it just seems interesting that all of a sudden Russia would like to go under the radar with their plans. I don't think that that's really fair to Americans who over here in the USA that have been looking to get answers as to what's going on. Her wife has been looking to get answers. The Biden administration, so many people looking to get answers. So it's just kind of frustrating. It seems like very unfair for them to all of a sudden want to seek so much quiet hush-hush with such a high-profile case.
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of both happening. So really quick, Romeo, to what you were saying, I think Russia is using this opportunity to throw in a little bit of everyone, right? So so-and-so was arrested 20 years ago. Let's throw them in there. This guy in Germany, he was convicted of murder. Throw them in. How bad do you really want Griner back home? How bad do you really want Paul Whelan back home? So they're going to take advantage of this as best as they can. And to your point, Demi, I think what they're trying to say is usually when we hear of prisoner swaps, even when we heard of Trevor Reed, we didn't know it happened until it happened. Yeah. And so I think what they're trying to say is, you know, they like to keep it behind the scenes so that way the public doesn't get to add too much and so it doesn't get out of hand. And so then I think it gets a little bit more complicated once everybody starts weighing in. And so maybe for the safety of Brittney and for the safety of everyone everyone involved. They want to keep it under wraps just a little bit so that way they can make sure the deal is done. But again, because it's such a high profile case, I don't think they're going to be able to do that because we want answers. We want to know what's going on with her. And, you know, we know that we feel like if we don't keep it in the public eye, it could go away. And we don't want that either.
No.
So the House January 6th committee says it will share 20 transcripts from its hearings with the Justice Department. The announcement comes as the Justice Department's probe into the insurrection begins to heat up. It's not known exactly which documents the two investigative bodies will share, but Chairman Benny Thomas has said that in the past that he wants the DOJ was interested in information related to the fake electors President Trump and his lawyers tried to use to overturn the 2020 election. So, you know, we wrapped up the first half of the hearings about a week or so ago. And so definitely looking to hear more developments that happen with the January 6th committee. But again, I go back to the one thing that I've said over and over and over again. They're going to have to give something very substantial for it to make sense why this whole probe began. You know, Benny Thompson. Excuse me. He's been very, you know, at the forefront of this, fighting for this, but also too, he's going to have to give us something to make it all make sense.
Yeah. I think that this right here is just a little bit of good news because the committee had rejected a Department of Justice request for more information back in May. And so now that they are handing over documents means that they either, you know, they have a solid case or they believe that there's some information there that they could use because just about, 2 months ago, they said no to their request. So this for me signals that they have amassed enough evidence. There's something there. So I think we're moving in the right direction of perhaps seeing some charges against Trump or something happening pretty soon because we know Trump has been throwing his hand in the race for president, and we don't want that. And so we want these papers or whatever these transcripts are to show that he was in on this January 6th attack and keep him from being able to run for president or something to keep him from being able to run for public office in any capacity again.
Agree. Now, the committee has not said if it plans to eventually share off its transcripts because they've done over 1,000 interviews. So, and some of the stories of that interview could be similar to each other, but we need to get the important ones out there because we have to have the truth. What we saw needs to add up to what people are putting in those transcripts, what people are saying, what people are testifying. We know what happened on that day. We know who triggered that whole situation. So it's so important that we dial in on that and get it done.
Yeah.
All right, a new bill is in Congress that would protect musicians from having their lyrics used against them in court. The RAP Act, known as the Restoring Artistic Protection Act, aims to protect an artist's right to self-expression. It was sponsored by Congressional Black Caucus members Hank Johnson and Jamal Bowman. It comes at the time when rappers Young Thug and Gunna have been indicted by Georgia District Attorney Fani Willis on RICO criminal charges. The incident cites specific lyrics from the rappers as evidence against them. It's ironic that it's called the RAP Act. You know, that's just blew me away from the top, right? But you're right. As artists, you should have freedom of speech. You should be able to say what you want to say. The problem is when you're doing things or when you get caught up in situations and they try and put two and two together. I don't think it's fair that they're doing that, but sometimes that is the problem. So if it's going to protect the artists from that standpoint, I agree with it. I am for it 100%. But how do we get around the fact that some of these people are actually involved with these things? That's the problem that I think we're dealing with here.
Mm-hmm. With this here, the RAP Act, the most important part is that it's going to limit the admissibility of evidence of an artist's creative or artistic expression. So my question with this is going back to Gunna and Young Thug, who are currently behind bars right now. And so we also saw the Lil Baby might be included in RICO charges as well. If this goes through, will they be able to backtrack? And then, because there's a story, a gossip story that says Gunna and Young Thug could catch a break. And so my question is, if this goes all the way through, does that mean they can backtrack, they get out of jail, and then it no longer counts, or will they still go through with what's happening right now with Gunna and Young Thug?
Yeah, that's a good question, Demi. We'll have to see how that turns out. But I know that a number of record labels, the Recording Academy, they have all signed on to support the bill. In fact, the president of the Recording Academy, he released a statement saying that the RAP Act in the House of Representatives is a crucial step forward in the ongoing battle to stop weaponizing the creative expression and using rap as a prosecution tactic. The bias against rap music has been present in our judicial system for far too long, and it's time we put a stop to this unconventional practice. Listen, so like both of you have already touched on, if you say it, should you be prosecuted against it? And a lot of people are arguing that it goes against the First Amendment right. A lot of people are arguing that this is how the KKK have been able to exist for so long, because it's protected by the First Amendment. Yeah. And so when you're an artist, and no matter what you rap about, that freedom of expression should be protected under the First Amendment right. And so that's how they were able to draft this bill. That's kind of the basis that it stands on. And so we'll have to just see what happens with it. All right. So just days after getting out of COVID isolation, President Biden has tested positive for COVID-19 again. The president's doctor says he's been tested negative. He tested negative and then he tested positive again Saturday morning. Biden's doctor says it's a rebound infection from an antiviral medication known as Paxlovid that the president was taking. Physicians have warned that rebound infections are seen in people who take Paxlovid, although how often that happens and the long-term effects aren't clear yet.
And Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas will no longer teach at George Washington University's law school. Co-lecturer Gregory Maggs sent an email saying he would now be the sole instructor. Justice Thomas has not responded yet publicly to the reports. There's been no explanation as to the reason for the change, but it comes on the heels of students protesting his role as an instructor.
The family of George Floyd is upset with the light sentences a judge recently gave 3 cops involved in the death of their loved one. Judge Paul Magnuson handed out penalties well below sentences suggested by federal prosecutors. Tutal, who had held back bystanders, as Derek Chauvin placed his knee on Floyd's neck, got 3.5 years in prison. J. Alexander King, who pinned Floyd back, got 3. Now, Thomas Lane, who held Floyd's feet, was sentenced to 2.5 years. Floyd's uncle says the judicial system favors those who should be locked up forever. The 3 men faced additional time in prison. Now, Lane pled guilty in a state court to 1 count of aiding and abetting second-degree murder. King, who is black, and Tao faced trial in October on charges that also aided and abetted both murder and manslaughter. We think about the times again, if we wonder how they even justify it. 2.5 here, 3.5 here. Here's a man that had a counterfeit $20 bill, they're saying, for buying cigarettes, and his life got taken from the world to see. And you think about the time that they're getting. We can't bring George Floyd back. We know what it done to us as black people, to people of color. We know what his murder has done to this country. Yet these men get 2.5 and 3.5 years. I feel like that's a smack in the face.
Yeah, the sentences are kind of light, definitely. For what we saw, what we witnessed, what we see now with our own 2 eyes. Whether they thought it was wrong or right, they went with it. Mm-hmm. And when that happens, as a police officer, I think you said this last week, Demi, you don't have that room to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. You don't get the ability to second guess yourself in that moment, because when you are a police officer, you have to do what's right at all times, and that clearly wasn't right. And 2.5, 3 years, I just don't think that's a long enough sentence. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is an update to a story we told you last week. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation says the door of a patrol car was never properly shut, transporting a black woman who died after falling out. Brittney Marie Griner's skull was fractured during the incident. She had been handcuffed by Hancock County deputies in front of her body. Her mother called 911 to report that Brianna was suffering from a schizophrenic episode. Griner's family hired attorney Ben Crump to help the family get the GBI involved in the probe of her death. The department's probe says the body cam footage says the trooper thought he closed the door, but he did not do it correctly. Griner's mother says her daughter's death is suspicious, but investigators say the footage shows the deputies had no other contact with her after they put her in the car.
Mm-hmm. And the defense attorney who defeated Marilyn Mosby in the race for Baltimore State's attorney will have an easy race in November. Ivan Bates' opponent in the general election, Roya Hanna, dropped out Friday. Bates beat Mosby in the Democratic primary last month. Mosby was the embattled state's attorney who prosecuted the officers involved in the death of Freddie Gray back in 2015. Without an opponent in the fall, Bates says he will focus on going after repeat violent offenders in Baltimore, as well as his department's budgetary issues.
Judges in North Dakota and Wyoming are temporarily blocking abortion bans in those states. The temporary bans come after lawsuits were filed arguing the bans violate their state constitutions. The Wyoming judge sided with employees of the Red River Women's Clinic, a firebombed women's health clinic. Now, the clinic official said the abortion ban would harm healthcare workers and their patients. The latest court action in North Dakota and Wyoming puts them with several other states where judges have temporarily blocked abortion bans.
And African Americans make up less than 1% of Boulder, Colorado's population, but we represent 10% of adult felony criminal cases between 2018 and 2019. The Denver Post reported on a 6-year study by the Vera Institute of Justice, an independent nonprofit group. Their mission is to end the mass incarceration of people in color, and their report says that black people in the county are charged with crimes 5 to 6 times more than white people. The county's district attorney, Michael Dodry, says his office plans to use the results to study the instances of racism in the state's criminal justice system.